Well, you see, I was gonna come into this video giving Spider-Man a perfect 10 out of 10. Best game ever made, makes you feel like Spider-Man. But then I remembered, this shit doesn't even have pizza time.
Pizza time.
Throughout the years, humanity has always strived to perfect one thing. Now, you may be thinking medical advancement or perhaps robotic technology, but no. The obvious answer is Spider-Man video games. There have been many people who have tried to make the perfect Spidey game. Honestly, there are too many to count. Spanning across multiple consoles and eras, it seems there have been many renditions of the guy. I think this is just because everyone wants the ability to play as Spider-Man. You could argue that Batman or Superman are perhaps more iconic, but Spider-Man is one of the most recognized and well-loved superheroes out there. I mean, this dude has had 3 movie reboots in the past 2 decades, which is unheard of in terms of superhero movies. But with his powers just looking so fun and satisfying to use, it's no secret why people would want the ability to play as him. His powers just lend themselves perfectly to video games. Then in comes Insomniac Games, unveiling the game at E3 in 2016. I was interested in the game as it looked pretty great, but it wasn't until the live demo at 2017's E3 where I was really convinced I was going to love this game. So much so that I bought a PS4 pretty much primarily just to play this game. That's how confident I was that this game was going to kick ass. Though it's also nice to finally be able to play God of War and other games. All of these factors put together made my hype for the game insanely high. This game was just looking like it was going to be the ultimate Spider-Man experience. Insomniac are known for adding that nice layer of polish to their games, and this was looking like no exception. With so much detail to the movement, world, and characters, in my mind, there was no way this could fail. I mean, you got Sony and Marvel's backing, a well-respected game company, and one Spidey boy, but yet, there was always the worry of them screwing this up anyways. And after the long wait, they certainly delivered, at least more so than Spider-Man 3 did. But now it's finally here. Join me in this video where I'll be telling you why I think this new Spider-Man game is not only amazing, but the best Spider-Man game we have so far. I should mention, I'll be avoiding spoilers as much as I can. I won't reveal any big plot points, just perhaps some minor stuff, so keep that in mind. But with that aside, let's swing on in. Movement in open world games has always been a slippery slope for me. A lot of the time developers will spend ages making these ginormous open worlds for you to explore. And while they're cool to explore, a lot of games fuck this up by making the way you traverse this map incredibly dull and boring. Take Skyrim for example, a great world you have here, but I guarantee you that you'll always be fast traveling to your destinations instead of doing this. Now of course you have Spider-Man, with one of the main things he's known for being his movement, swinging through New York, building to building, climbing up walls, chasing you to the ends of the earth.
Sugar! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
That's basically what he's most well known for, and as said, this makes him perfect when it comes to video games, and combining these abilities with an open world just works beautifully. You can run up a wall, zip over a roof, zip around corners, launch yourself from poles to get some speed. You have a lot of choice on how you travel around the map, which in turn makes it fun. I think the best part about this is you never have to really ever stop. There are some rare moments where something will block your path, but for the most part, the game's designed so Spider-Man can run across, swing through practically anything. These fire escape ladders, which in other games may have blocked your path, are now easy to scale and get past with little to no problem. You have these construction pipes that you can glide through like butter in a frying pan to pick up some momentum. There's never a dull moment while traveling around, which is great, and it feels pretty cinematic at times, which is another bonus. Spider-Man does actually have a fast travel system, believe it or not, but throughout my entirety of the game time, I've only used this feature a total amount of once, and that's because it was basically required by the story. You do get these little funny cutscenes because of it, which does add to the game's charm, but honestly, it's way more fun to travel around to your next objective manually, that I was never really compelled to catch the subway. I could honestly just swing around for half an hour and still have more fun than a lot of recent games I've played, just because of its fast-paced nature. This focus on movement is also beneficial to the game, as it gives you a chance to discover many things around the map to collect or even do. You can find backpacks full of very important items, landmarks that even call back to some MCU locations, Black Cat's scopings where she tries to fuck your dick off, and then there's plenty of activities such as crimes you're alerted to, Taskmaster's challenges, Fisk and Demon hideouts. There is so much stuff to do, and so, because you're always manually traveling around, you end up seeing a lot more of this than you normally would if you just fast traveled. If you were just quickly fast traveling everywhere, then the chances are you'd miss out half the stuff this game has to offer. It would be like playing Banjo-Kazooie, but instead of getting the collectibles, you just fast travel to the next world. It's no secret that the movement you can do in this game is your best asset, which is basically much like every Spider-Man game. But this one is probably the only one we've gotten where it has that extra polish and is incredibly refined. Insomniac proved they were capable of doing this in Sunset Overdrive, with its fast-paced traveling, and they've 100% outdone themselves with this game. They were clearly one of the best choices for this type of game, but swinging isn't the only thing Spidey is known for. We've also got to talk about his combat. With the past Spider-Man games, in regards to combat, none of them have ever been too interesting. A lot of the time, it'll just come down to button mashing, with perhaps the involvement of some web here and there, but for the most part, they've always been very bare bones and hollow. That was until this new game. Now, that's not to say the combat isn't exactly like that. There is a fair bit of button mashing occasionally, but this time around, it gives you so much freedom in the combos and what you actually want to fight like that it completely makes up for all of that. Now, with the actual combos aside, there's plenty of ways to fight in this game. You could be standard and just wail on these guys with a bunch of punches, but there's so many other things in your arsenal that you can do. For instance, you have a gadget wheel of different web gadgets that you can use to your advantage. You have your standard webs for sticking people to places or restricting goons. You have electric webs to stun people, web mines to create traps, or even summon a spider drone to attack your enemies. With so many different moves, gadgets, and objects in the environment to use to your advantage, it helps keep the fighting fresh with each encounter you have. In one fight, you could be simply punching some guys, but in another, you could decide to kick a guy up, web him up midair, before slamming him stuck to a wall. Now that's what I call badass. The possibilities are pretty wide, and you can make decisions on how you want to take guys out based on your playstyle or simply what you think is the best method. Essentially, the raw fundamentals of the combat, those being the punches and kicks, are pretty much basic like the Arkham games, but with Spider-Man's webs and gadgets, it makes up for that simpleness by adding a lot of variety and choice. And hey, at least the dodging actually takes some skill in this game compared to Arkham. You can't just spam that shit, you gotta time it just right, and you're rewarded for doing so. It's not perfect, however, as in long drawn out fights it can get pretty repetitive and sometimes tedious. I found a lot of the Fisk and Demon hideout challenges where you face waves of enemies to get a little dull a few rounds in, and sadly, a lot of the boss fights just aren't very interesting. Essentially, pretty much all the boss fights go like this. You find the bad guy, you'll exchange some dialogue, he'll throw out an attack, you'll dodge it, and then eventually he gets tired and you can attack him. Rinse and repeat that a few times until you've finally beaten him. There's not a whole lot to any of them, and once you've figured out what you need to do to dodge, it's pretty much the easiest shit going. But much like the actual superhero movies this game is based on, even though the gameplay isn't the most thrilling, they compensate for that by making it as flashy and exciting as can be. Whether that's through the grand scale attacks some of these bad guys do, or the cinematics that play during and after these fights, each one is made to seem much more grand and an actual spectacle because of this, which in turn complements the story greatly. The story for this game, unlike a lot of the old games, is based on an entirely new and fresh story, not really explored. well, not really explored outside of the comics, but I wouldn't really know about that since I don't read any of them. You got Peter Parker, but instead of working for the Daily Bugle, he's now working as a scientist while Mary Jane is actually working at the Bugle. I think this change makes a bit more sense as Peter Parker is really meant to be more of a smart guy in the grand scheme of things, and Mary Jane isn't actually a useless character now. She pulls her weight and does stuff to actually help. I don't want to give too much away about the plot, but let's just say some new faces come along after Wilson Fisk's takedown, leaving the city open to the new gang called the Demons. And so Spidey's gotta take these crooks down, along with a few familiar faces, as well as some new ones. Okay, yeah, I admit it, they added in Fence-Eater and Big Wheel, which are honestly just great additions. For me, this is probably my favourite take of Spider-Man I've seen in media so far. Due to us never having seen a Spider-Man quite like this, it makes it much more interesting and a fresh concept. When it comes to the Raimi and the Amazing movies, which despite the name are not amazing, we see the standard high school Spider-Man where he gets bit by a spider and Uncle Ben dies. Spider-Man Homecoming got rid of the origins and Uncle Ben's death that had essentially become a movie trope but still stayed with the formula of a high school Peter Parker. But in this game, you see Peter after he's actually graduated from college, dealing with the troubles of growing up. It's a take on him that I actually prefer, as he isn't as whiny as the previous iterations and is a much more mature version of him that seems to know exactly what he's doing. And it's also great in this regard as the world feels like it has truly existed for a long ass time. You have to understand that Peter in this universe has been Spider-Man for over 8 years, and the characters act that way. You have callbacks to previous events that you have never heard or seen before. The character interactions speak as if they've done this time and time again. It's small, but it does help in a big way, make these characters feel like they've actually existed for 8 years. The story in general is pretty well written. A lot of the characters seem pretty sincere and have some actual weight to them. Most of them have clear personality and aspirations they want to achieve, and the villains are just completely over the top, which I personally love, since it fits Marvel perfectly. Scorpion's a perfect example of this. Like, just listen to this jackass.
This is too good to be true.
He thinks he's in an anime or something. I did however feel that the story was pretty slow at the start, and it really does take a while for things to get properly going. But once the story starts getting to the climax, holy shit does it get going. The ending to this game was simply amazing. I felt everything had built up to it very nicely. There were a lot of great moments that I'll continue to remember. It was bittersweet, it was spectacularly cinematic, and it was also charming in its own way, especially with the after credits. Make sure you wait around for those, like every single Marvel related thing these days. The game is set up perfectly for a sequel, and I'm 100% on board for one. Or fuck it, just let Insomniac make a whole bunch of Marvel games. They could make a great Iron Man game, Captain America game, or perhaps just an Avengers game where you can switch between characters. I just want Insomniac to keep making games with these beloved characters. So overall, I think it's safe to say that Insomniac pretty much nailed the story on this one. I was fully confident they would nail the gameplay since they're great at that stuff, but I was a little skeptical if the story would live up to a game on this scale, and even with a few hiccups, I think Insomniac definitely delivered on that front. This game overall just makes you feel like a superhero. This game tends to get compared to the Arkham series of games, probably because they're both examples of high quality superhero games, as hero games typically tend to be cheaply made for a cash grab or are just made by not very good devs. But I don't think Arkham really nailed the reality of being a hero. I mean, yeah, you feel like Batman, but you don't feel like a hero. Spider-Man, on the other hand, completely makes you feel like a full-fledged superhero in the flesh. And I know the feel thing is a meme and all, but fuck you, I think this point still stands. I think what helps this majorly is just Marvel in general. DC tends to be a lot more edgy with dark, brooding characters who act more serious for the most part, but Marvel is full of snarky dipshits who think they're the funniest guy since Ben Stiller. In a more simplified word, the Marvel universe tends to be much more campy in comparison. And what's more campy than superheroes in spandex? Spider-Man might just be the leader in this front. This feeling just makes you feel more heroic when you actually do these good deeds with a positive attitude. It's kind of like All Might, you know? It wouldn't be the same if he was like,
I'm here to save you.
But because he's like, aha, never fear, for I am here, he feels like a genuine hero trying to do good, and Spider-Man in this game is no exception. Going back to what I said at the start, where you'll always want to manually travel around, I mentioned that you'll find crimes going on around the city. Now, you don't really have to do these, you can just zip on by and ignore them if you choose to, but while swinging you're reminded, hang on a minute, I'm fucking Spider-Man, damn it! So you swing your ass over there and solve whatever crime is happening. You feel like it's your duty as a hero to put a stop to them, and if you do avoid stopping the crime, then you'll have motherfucking J. Jonah Jameson to call you out on your shit.
Hey, it's lucky no one got killed. But here's the really messed up part. I saw Spider-Man in the area, and he didn't do a thing to stop it.
Aha! Of course not. Why? Because
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
So with that as well, you definitely want to stop some crime. The music for a lot of these scenes are just incredible. They're these bombastic symphonies they'll play during cutscenes or when you're just playing the game, and it just complements the gameplay so well. Swinging through New York goes from a simple way to maneuver to making you feel like it's one of those swinging montages directly from the films. People on the streets will stop you for high fives, cheer you on, take selfies with you, or even notify you of a crime going on. It helps make you feel more heroic when all these people are there to treat you like some sort of celebrity, and the constant controversy around your existence from none other than J. Jonah Jameson helps in this too, as heroes always have controversy surrounding them. It's one of the MCU's main themes. Even quick time events, which yes, I agree a lot of the time they're very cheap ways of pretending the game has gameplay, and when they were shown in the E3 gameplay, a lot of people were quick to rag on this, but I feel they're used just enough to actually benefit the game. Stopping a crane falling becomes much more tense when you realize you need to hit the buttons at the right time, or it feels like you're actually stopping the car thanks to the more physical movement needed for these events. Of course they're not hard to do, but it helps in feeling like you're doing some heroic shit, and it's much better than other Spider-Man games.
Please, someone! I'm going to die.
And at the end of the day, if a superhero game makes you feel like a hero, then what else do you really need? All of these things contribute into making this game one of the best Marvel and dare I say superhero games ever made. From the gameplay to the story to the little things. There's so much detail into this game I could go over, but from my point of view, this is one of the best superhero experiences I've ever played. But some people don't agree. Now I figured I'd touch up on this a little bit, as seeing this on my Twitter feed, go follow me, really did piss me off. There were many accusations a week before launch on how the game was actually downgraded, with some screenshots to try and prove this. And so if we actually look at these screenshots, well I mean, it's clear to see. They got rid of some fucking puddles. Holy shit! Pull the alarm, boys, we got an emergency on our hands. But in reality, the changes are very minor, and I think what threw people off the most was the changes to the suit. They made some changes so that the suit isn't as shiny looking, which actually makes it more realistic. I'd assume puddles were removed because of performance issues, or perhaps just a change of art direction. But there's honestly such little differences besides that. I'm just going with the mindset it was the Xbox owners sad that they couldn't play this game. God, I pity them. All things considered, this game still looks absolutely incredible. I was astounded on how real some of the characters looked, from their textures to their animations. Everything looks beautiful, and I'm so thankful this game got a photo mode, because it really did deserve one. I mean, just look at this photo. If I told a stranger on the streets that this was a picture from the upcoming Spider-Man movie, I bet a large majority of them would believe me. But at the end of the day, I couldn't really care less. In my mind, you should not come to a game like Spider-Man acting like graphics are gonna be the main attraction, because the one thing Spider-Man games will always have a focus on is gameplay and maybe story. Graphics to me will always be a byproduct. Honestly, this game could have looked like the original Nintendo 64 game, and I would have played the crap out of it. So to put it lightly, these downgrade claims were all bullshit. Simple as. So to wrap this video up, this game fully met my hype. It may not be a perfect 10 out of 10 game. It's got some problems like a few boring missions, some features that seem pointless seeing as you can just skip them, and some minor stuff. But honestly, these few flaws can't outweigh the pure joy I had playing this game. I bought the PS4 just for this and I have zero regrets. Probably one of, if not my favorite games of the year so far. Anyways, that's about it. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, feel free to like and subscribe. Comment your own thoughts or perhaps suggest a future video topic. Anyways, I'll see you boys later.